Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast with your host, Michael Sapersky, where we take you deep into the world of elite consultants.
Hey, it's Michael Sapersky here, and today I'm very excited to have Dorie Clark joining us. Dorie, welcome.
Michael, thanks for having me.
Well, it's a real honor and pleasure. I'm excited to dive right in. For those that don't know you, tell us just a little bit about your area of expertise, where you're based, just a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah, thank you. Well, right at the moment, I am in New York City in my apartment, looking out on the financial district. And how I spend my time, I actually write business books. My most recent one, Entrepreneurial You, is coming out October 3rd. Awesome. Before that, I've written about professional reinvention. That's a book called Reinventing You, and a book called Stand Out, which is about how to become preeminent, a recognized expert in your field. I teach part-time for the Fuqua School of Business at Duke, and what I'm really passionate about is helping entrepreneurs and talented professionals make sure that in an increasingly noisy marketplace that they know how to get their true talents noticed and appreciated and recognized.
Love it. And you work with organizations, you consult with them. How do you spend your time between teaching, consulting, writing? What kind of percentages would you put to that currently?
You know, it's pretty evenly split across the board, and that is very deliberate. When I started my business 11 years ago, I was almost exclusively making money from one thing, which was doing marketing strategy consulting for organizations. I'd help them with a marketing plan or social media plan, that kind of thing. And it was good. You know, I earned a good living. But what I came to realize was that ultimately, if you are not diversified, you have a lot of market risk. Situations can change, budgets can be cut. And even if you are an entrepreneur and you have a number of clients, if you're doing the same thing for everybody, it becomes a little bit perilous. And so that was actually one of the things that inspired my most recent book that's coming out in October, Entrepreneurial You, because I very concertedly decided that I needed to find ways to develop multiple income streams. And so today I actually make my living in 7 different ways. You named some of them. I do still some consulting. I do executive coaching, write books, teach business school, do paid professional speaking. I have a number of online classes that I offer, and I also do affiliate marketing. So with those 7 income streams, it's a way to really leverage what I do and also de-risk what I do.
Love it. Well, there's a lot for us to get into there, but let's go back a bit. You mentioned that you kind of started off doing strategy and consulting for organizations. How did you end up there? I mean, were you working in corporate America first? Like, what was the background before actually launching into consulting?
I actually have basically never worked in the corporate world, which is kind of a funny background. I also was a philosophy major in college, so
perfect. Yeah.
You could definitely say I learned by doing. The way that I got into my current business was actually pretty circuitous. I had to reinvent myself a lot, which led me, in fact, to write my first book, Reinventing You. I started out as a theology student. I got a master's degree in theological studies from Harvard Divinity School, thought I was going to go into academia, and ended up getting turned down by all of the doctoral programs that I applied to. So that didn't work so well. I then became a political journalist, and that was a cool career, but I got laid off from that because journalism was collapsing. So I shifted over into working for political campaigns, and I worked for some high-profile ones. I was a spokesperson for a governor's race, for a presidential campaign in the U.S., and both of my candidates lost. So there were a lot of fits and starts along my journey to entrepreneurship, which I think many of your listeners can probably relate to. But what actually turned the tide for me was after the presidential campaign ended, I decided to go back to Boston, where I'd been living at the time. and I took a job running a nonprofit, and I did that for 2 years. And I think oftentimes people imagine that nonprofits are just so different from the corporate world, or the world of entrepreneurship, that they're like the polar opposite. And, yes, in some cases, the pace is slower or it's a bureaucratic thing, but I was running a tiny nonprofit, and we had to be extraordinarily scrappy and extraordinarily resourceful in order to stay afloat. And those were principles that really helped me realize, oh, this is what it means to run a business. This is how you do it. And so after 2 years of that training on the job, essentially, I decided that I would go out on my own and run my own business. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 11 years.
You just shared, a lot of challenges along the way, from applying for like a PhD program, getting turned down by multiple schools, to the job that you're working at, not ultimately maybe achieving the success that maybe people would consider to be success, but you kept going. What kept you going? I mean, a lot of people would potentially get stalled or get pushed down, and it'd be very hard for them to get up, but you did keep going. So what was your mindset at that time when you were encountering those challenges?
Well, at a really basic level, and I think this is probably the case for a lot of people, I needed to support myself. I was in my early 20s, and, I knew my parents wouldn't let me starve. I always had a place on their couch if I needed it. But unfortunately, their couch was in a small town in North Carolina, and that was not where I was wanting to be. So I was going to do anything possible to be able to keep myself going and actually living in what I considered to be the place that I wanted to be. So I did just really feel like, okay, you can wallow for a little bit, you can wallow for a day or two, but after that, you have to start figuring out how to support yourself. And so actually one of the steps that I did not mention along the journey, but that was critical to me later on as an entrepreneur, was during the period between being laid off from my journalism job and then getting hired to be a spokesperson on the gubernatorial campaign. That was a period of about maybe six or 7 months. Not a huge amount of time, but obviously, you need to be earning some income while that happens. And so I started picking up freelance journalism work. And that was the greatest training, because ultimately, if you're a freelance journalist, you eat what you kill. You are only getting paid if you can convince an editor, this is interesting, this is news, this is a story that needs to be told. And so very quickly, you have to hone your sense of what is interesting in general and what will be interesting in particular to that editor, and how to pitch it and how to frame it in a way that he or she will pay you money to do it. So that was great, because, fundamentally as an entrepreneur, what are you doing? Well, you're trying to get inside the head of your customers and figure out what will get them to part with money that they will say thank you and find it valuable. And just having that mental exercise and knowing that you're not going to be able to pay your bills if you can't do it. It was a high pressure situation, but one that was extraordinarily impactful to me.
Right. So when you started your business, you kind of look back at the steps that you took or the strategies that you used to win your first clients, and compare that to, let's say, you're now 11 years in. So if, when you were maybe 3 years in, and then even more recently, does the marketing approach that you used back then differ from what you're doing now? If you can just kind of talk about maybe the different types of marketing or the different approaches that you've used as your business has developed, just to compare and contrast, would love if you could share.
Yeah, this is an important question. So I'm glad you asked it, Michael. My marketing has changed substantially over the 11 years of my business. And I actually wrote a piece for Harvard Business Review about this, but I've developed sort of a framework for how to think about this, which is the marketing versus sales spectrum. And what I mean by this, we, of course, people talk about marketing and sales, and, we know what they mean definitionally. But I think that a lot of times people don't really consider the fact that they are, they really do work hand in glove. And early on in your business, when you're first starting, the most important thing, unless of course you have a trust fund or something to rely on, the most important thing early on is you have to get business in the door. You have to get clients today or tomorrow so that you can pay the bills and give yourself runway. That's job one. And so early on, your business is going to be overweighted, over-indexed with sales activities, which means literally just like emailing or calling your existing contacts, asking for referrals, pressing the flesh so that you can get a sale quickly to get money in the bank. Now, once you're able to do enough of that, once you've got a little bit of leeway, once you've got some recurring customers and you're not stressing about, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay my bills? That buys you the time to do marketing. And now marketing is a much more long-term horizon oriented. Marketing is the activities that you do that are probably not going to pay a dividend today, but will pay a dividend next month or next year or in 5 years. And the more you can spend time doing that, the higher the plateau you can reach. And so ultimately what you want to be able to do is shift your ratios so that you are doing far more marketing and far less sales, because it's marketing that will have a greater long-term benefit. And so in the beginning, I almost exclusively did sales, and today I basically do no sales. I do marketing fully, meaning I spend my time on content creation, on giving speeches, writing books, that kind of thing, with the goal of attracting customers to me so that the sales process is not me knocking on their door and asking or begging. The sales process is them coming to me and saying, can I work with you? Me quoting a price and them saying, okay, great.
So when you were, in the early days having to do a lot more on the sales side, did you ever feel uncomfortable about reaching out to people or asking for referrals or having to do ongoing, consistent follow-up, or did that just come very natural to you?
I wouldn't say it came naturally to me. I would be skeptical if it actually comes naturally to anyone, because societally we're conditioned, almost all of us, that it's sort of an awkward thing. It's a little weird. You kind of have to psych yourself up to do it. But for me, the key thing that I kept in mind that made it easier and better for me is that I am personally repulsed by high pressure sales tactics. And I know that any business relationship that is founded on them is not going to last very long, because people might accede to them, but they will resent them. And before long, they're going to find a way to fight back and shut that down. So whenever I asked for anything, whenever I asked for, for business or for referrals or whatever, I always made sure to make it very low pressure and give people an out. People want to choose to do something. They want to choose to buy something or to choose to do business with you, not feel forced into it. So, I always peppered it very liberally with phrases like, first of all, instead of saying, oh, will you buy this? Or, will you, I want to break into your company. Will you hire me? I would say something like, it's really been a long-standing goal of mine to do business with your company. I would love to find a way to do that. Do you have advice for me about the best way to break in? And, that way there's a lot of room. They can either say, oh, Dorie, we've been wanting to do business with you too. Let's do it. Or they can say, well, I don't really know, but, Michael is really the person. Let me introduce you to them. Or if they don't want to, fine. That's okay. That's okay too. You'll find another way in, but it's a lot better to have someone who's helping you do so willingly. So you give them room to make the choice to help you or to bring you in.
And how quickly did you find in your own case that from the time that you started to really be active in the sales area, that business started to roll in? Was it quite quickly, or did it take, a matter of months, or what did the timeline look like for you?
Well, I always advise people that if they're starting a business, at a minimum, you should have 6 months of cash reserves, just because, sometimes that is how long the pipeline takes. It's even better if you have a year. But for me, in terms of how long it actually took me about 2 months after starting my business to be able to land and sign the contracts for my first clients. So it actually felt like it was moving pretty fast because, within a few weeks, I was setting up initial meetings, and then sometimes it takes a couple of meetings, with different decision makers to be able to get the contract signed. I think that it's important to keep in mind that for probably almost anyone who is starting a business, the folks who are going to be your earliest customers are people that already know you, because you don't have a track record. There's no reason for a stranger to take a chance on you. The people who are willing to take a chance on you are those that have some prior connection, and they might say, well, we've never done business with Michael in this way, but we know he's a good guy. So we'll sign the contract. And so reaching out assiduously to your existing network and letting them know about what you're doing is going to be crucial. And that was certainly how I was able to get my first business. It was almost exclusively people who had worked with me at past jobs.
Right. Dorie, you've written several books. What role have they played in the development of your business?
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early-stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early-stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
The books have actually been really substantial for me. Prior to the release of my first book, Reinventing You, as I mentioned, all I did was marketing strategy consulting.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a high enough profile to be able to do some of the other stuff like public speaking, which is what I.
So you weren't doing any
liked.
speaking before you launched your book?
Well, I mean, I was doing free speaking,
okay.
Right? I was doing like Chamber of Commerce workshop,
Right.
So it was sort of maybe a local business development thing, but
Mm-hmm.
nobody would pay me money. Nobody would pay me more than like, oh, here's $50 to buy yourself dinner kind of thing. The book was useful in terms of creating the kind of gravitas and credibility that would show an event organizer that I was a legitimate voice that was distinguished enough in the marketplace that it warranted paying me.
So you publish your book. Did you publish it yourself, or do you have a trade publisher?
Yeah. So my first book, Reinventing You, and also the one that's coming out, Entrepreneurial You, are both done with Harvard Business Review Press.
Okay.
And my most recent book that came out, it's called Stand Out, was done with Portfolio, which is the business imprint of Penguin.
Okay. And so the success that you've had with your books, would you connect that to the role of the publisher in marketing and promoting the book, or did you have to do a lot of that yourself?
I think every author would pretty much tell you the same thing. I mean, frankly, every publisher would probably tell you the same thing, which is that a book is never going to succeed on the strength of what the publisher does. Mm-hmm. The publisher can help around the edges, and certainly, the Harvard Business Review brand was helpful to me. They're a great powerful brand to be associated with. And they do, in fact, have some advantages that other publishers don't. For instance, they market directly to consumers. They have extensive email lists, for instance, which a lot of publishers do not maintain. So it gives them some additional channels to reach people through. But no, you really have to get out there and beat the bushes. I mean, I think about some of the activities that I did for Stand Out in 2015. I appeared on 160 podcast interviews that year between February and October of 2015. I did 160 podcast interviews. So that was a huge cornerstone of my strategy. I also traveled a lot. In 2015, I gave 74 speeches, which, if you break it down, it's about it's in the neighborhood of 1 to 2 a week. Mm-hmm. So I was spending a significant amount of the time on the road, traveling, just really hustling to try to get the book exposed to new audiences.
How, with all of that activity, right? Because that's a significant amount of activity. How do you look at your work versus life balance? How do you ensure that you're not only taking care of your business, but you're also taking care of yourself?
Well, there are certain things that I certainly try to emphasize. One thing that's really important for me is I don't compromise on sleep. Every once in a while you might have to get up really early to go to an airport or something like that, but that is very much the exception for me. I do not push myself when it comes to sleep, because that, I feel like that's kind of the cornerstone on which everything else is built. I'm not going to write well. I'm not going to speak well. I'm not going to be in a good mood if I haven't gotten enough sleep. So I'm with Arianna Huffington on this one. I certainly get 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night without fail. But yeah, I mean, the truth is, it is difficult on work-life balance. And I think the best way that I think of it, Michael, is that there are phases and there are waves. And I recognized that when the book was in release mode, it was really important for me to take that time and just double down and say, you know what, this is work time. There's only a limited moment where people care about your book or are willing to listen. And so I have to take advantage of it. But that being said, you do that and then you change tack. You can't do the same thing forever. So in 2015, I was going nuts promoting Stand Out. I was traveling all over, flying, all of that. And in 2016, I said, okay, enough. And so I cut my travel literally in half. I did about, I think, 36 talks that year as compared to 74. Mm-hmm. So it was a stark difference, because I viewed it as a much more internal and internally focused year. So I was able to stay at home. I was working on writing, my new book, Entrepreneurial You. And I also made a commitment to myself, sort of a New Year's resolution, as it were. I felt that I was not taking sufficient advantage of living in New York, which of course is a great cultural city. And, I was staying home and working all the time. And so instead I decided that I would make a resolution, which I kept, that every week, and I would write it down, I'd keep a list. Every week I would do at least one, quote unquote, uniquely New York cultural activity, whether that was visiting a Broadway show or a museum or just, some kind of cool thing that they have in New York and not other places. And I really made a concerted effort to do that and to try to take advantage of where I was living and my personal life. Right.
I talk with a lot of consultants, Dorie, and many who are busy delivering on projects, or they have, a full client schedule, or even sometimes those in the early stages can often feel just overwhelmed with the process of going out and getting clients and building their business. But here you are, you're speaking, you're doing executive coaching, you're consulting, you're writing books, you've got a lot going on. How do you manage all of that? How do you stay productive and stay at high levels of performance and output? What's your approach and mindset to that?
Well, thank you. I appreciate the question, which has a kind premise behind it. Thanks. I mean, I too, of course, feel at times really overwhelmed. The emails sort of crash into the inbox, and as soon as you clean it out, they're back again. So I think it's a struggle for all of us. But some of the strategies that I have used to be able to focus on this, one that has made a big difference in my life is adopting a philosophy that was laid out by Paul Graham, who's a well-known Silicon Valley thinker.
Right.
And he has a strategy called manager days versus maker days. And he wrote an essay about it. Folks can Google it, where he talks about, sort of the ideal day for a manager is, boom, 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 meeting every hour, every half hour, you're talking to somebody on the phone, or you're having a meeting or a conference call or a webinar or whatever it is, because your job is to just keep projects moving forward. You got to talk with people, touch base, answer questions, boom. A maker day is something very different, because a maker, typically in his case, it would be a software developer, but it could also be, for instance, a writer, if you're writing a book, or, anyone who's trying to create something that is a little bit bigger, long-term, original project. That does extremely poorly if you try to shoehorn that into half-hour segments. You need time for the process to unfold and for you to kind of get into your flow state so that you're able to really be productive. And so, because I have a lot of maker tasks that I do, I write books, I create online courses, I have a sort of flagship course called the Recognized Expert course. I do all these things that require a lot of substantive deep dives. And so, what I try very specifically to do is designate certain days on the calendar as manager days versus maker days. This, for instance, is the day we're talking. This is a manager day. I have 7 phone calls today. I'm doing, or actually 8 phone calls. I have 3 of them are podcast interviews. 3 of them are calls about potential business opportunities. One is a coaching call with a coaching client of mine. And then I had a marketing call with Harvard Business Review today to talk about the release of Entrepreneurial You. So I sandwiched them all in today. It's back to back. It's kind of relentless, honestly, but it is for the purpose of having another day this week that is completely unscheduled so that I can do the creative work that I need and really make traction on it.
How much in advance do you schedule those days? Do you look at the month in advance or several months in advance, or is it just kind of week by week where you decide which day is going to be what?
If I did it week by week, the days would probably have already been eaten up. So I set it actually pretty early. I use a scheduling tool called Schedule Once.
Yep.
Many
we use it too. It's
yeah,
a great
exactly.
tool.
Yeah, popular with many podcasters. And basically, it's an automated calendar, so you can set the days that you want to have your meetings. And so I just send it out to people anytime somebody wants to have a phone call with me. If I agree to the premise of that, I'll send them the calendar. And of course, if they can't make the days that I've specified, if it's important, I'll come up with something else. But it's sort of a good initial pass, because it helps funnel all of the meetings onto certain days that I pick. I usually set everything about 2 months in advance, which days are going to be manager days versus which days are maker days.
Good stuff. Well, Dorie, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to share some of your story here and experiences. Really do appreciate it. Before we sign off here, what's the best way for people to learn more about your work and to connect with you?
Well, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate the chance to talk with you and to have this conversation. The best way for folks to connect with me, actually on my website, DorieClark.com, I have more than 400 free articles that I've written for places like Forbes and the Harvard Business Review, and even more to the point, for entrepreneurs and professionals who really want to be able to stand out and get noticed amidst all the competition, all the noise. I do have a free resource. It is a 42-page standout self-assessment that actually helps people hone in on what their breakthrough idea is, and it walks them step by step through how best they can spread that breakthrough idea. And they can get it for free on my website, DorieClark.com, DorieClark.com.
Beautiful. Go check it out, guys. Dorie, thanks again so much.
Thanks, Michael.
Are you ready to take your consulting business to the next level? Learn more about the Accelerator Coaching Program at consultingsuccess.com.